Yo, what is up? It is I, your boy, Matty Milligan, and this is the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo! Alright, so today we're going to be talking about permission marketing. And I'll tell you why we're going to be talking about this. Over the last few weeks, I've received so many messages on Facebook from random people I don't know. I receive them as well on Skype a lot. I'll open up my Skype and every week, a couple times a week actually, I'll have a random message from someone out there. And they're just basically going into their pitch right off the bat. Again, whether it's Skype or I've had it happen on WhatsApp actually as well. And they just send you, it's like, hey, like I do XYZ, da 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 da, da 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 da. And it's like these long-winded messages. And at the end, it's like, hey, and then there's like a story inside. It's like, hey, it personally made me XYZ results. So when you do this to me, I'm probably not going to open up your stuff. Like, don't spam me. I don't care what it is, especially when you spam me and then include your affiliate link. Like, it's an automatic block from me. Like, I really don't care, even if it's like Frank Kern. Like if Frank Kern messages you like, hey, buddy, what's up? How's it going? Here's an affiliate link for this product. It made me XYZ amount of money. Could make you some as well. I'd be like, no, sorry, Frank. Like, you should have asked my permission first. So this is what I recommend doing. And I think getting people's explicit consent to start marketing to them is super important. One of my favorite books that goes super in deep into this topic is, of course, Permission Marketing by Seth Godin, which I believe was released in 1999. And this was even before Web 2.0, with all the email marketing, all the messenger bots, all the direct messaging back and forth stuff. Like, at the time, I think then cell phones were still pretty new. They had those old Motorola like box phones, those like Kleenex box phones, right? Where you'd be like, you have to like open up the thing and then talk on the phone like this. And they were absolutely ridiculous looking. And so he wrote this back then. So I think getting people's permission is super important. This is why in Canada they have these double opt-in rules where it's like, oh, you need someone to get them permission, you need to get their permission twice. Now, one trick that I do is, when I do have opt-in pages, is on the call to action button. I don't like to put buy now or order now or get this or add to cart, checkout. I don't like that stuff. I like my call to actions to always have like the word yes. It's like, yes, I want to receive this. Yes, give me my free report. Yes, give me my free cheat sheet. Yes, give me my free ebook. I want the person to say yes. And the reason for that is I want their permission to market to them. Like, I'm asking them, I think a lot of people with their lead magnets and their opt-in pages make the mistake of like overcomplicating things when it's a super simple yes or no question. This is usually why people are like, oh, my opt-in is super low. It's like 1 or 2%. And it's like, and I see these other people out there who have like 40, 50%. And it's like, well, it's just a simple yes or no. And when you have something free, when it's a yes or no, and it's a no-brainer, then it's going to make it a lot easier. But there's so many people that I see just like spamming. Like, spamming to me is basically just this like pray and spray method where you're like, oh, like, all right, let me just like send my messages out there, and like, here's what you do. You're like, okay, you write out your message and then you're about to hit send, and you hit send, and then you're like, oh man, please come back. Like, please come back with the sale. Like, click on my link. First of all, like, you're hoping someone's going to click on your link and then they're going to purchase at the same time when you haven't delivered them value. And they don't even know who you are. And it's funny because these are people from all over the world. You'd expect it to be some sort of click farm spam place in India. But it's always people, it seems to be a lot of people from Europe. I've had it happen from a few people in the US and in Canada over the last few weeks. And it's like, I don't know you. And the weird thing is there's these times too when people will send me a friend request and they'll just be like, hey man, how's your business? And I'll be like, how do I know you from anywhere? And it might be something where I've gone into a group and commented on that, and they're using the technique where they're friending you and then direct messaging you from there and being like, hey, what's up? There's one dude actually where, I'm not gonna lie, like he's doing that, and I'm like, okay, like let's see, what he's about. So I'm at least giving him a chance because he's not opening from there. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. When you start right off the bat sending me this long-winded message, after I see 2 or 3 things, like I don't have time for that, man. Like, this isn't email. Like, email is meant to be longer. Messages are meant to be like 2 or 3 sentences. So when you are sending those broadcasts, understand that people in their email, because longer form stuff in email is native to email, But quick messages and bots, like it needs to be 2 or 3 sentences max, right? Something that when someone opens their phone, they don't have to like thumb down and scroll down to see the rest of the message. But in email, people understand that they totally will have to do that in some cases. I think Seth Godin, though, in the book Permission Marketing, makes the perfect analogy for this, where I believe it goes something like, all right, imagine you're in an airport and it's like super busy and it's like, I don't know, noon and there's everyone running around and it's like you're at the airport in the middle of the Christmas rush when everyone's trying to get everywhere and there's a million things happening and then like people are coming up to you and asking stuff and you're like, oh, like, but imagine if you were in an airport and it's completely empty and like one dude walks up to you and he's like, hey man, how's it going? And you're like, oh, like what's up, dude? And he's like, oh, how's it going? Yeah, blah blah blah. He's like, oh yeah, like, would you be interested in this? And again, he's asking your permission first, and it's just a less crowded thing. And people want to be sold stuff that they're interested in, and that's really focused on like certain product categories that they're super interested in. But when you just spam people and like pray and hope they get back to you, like that's not really relationship marketing, which I talked about previously, right? You're not building that rapport, you're not building trust, you're not building the bond, you're just like hit it and quit it mentality where it's like, oh, let's just get this quick sale and then I'll make that commission and then I'll get paid forever. And sure, that works, dude. Like, I'm sure there's people out there and they do this and they teach it to other people and that stuff works. But if you're trying to maximize the lifetime value of a customer, which is something you should be focused on, because it's a lot harder to get new customers than it is to sell more stuff to customers that already like you and already bought stuff from you, from your buyer and who are on your buyers list. That's really what the goal needs to be. Now, getting people's permission as well works on the principle of psychology called commitment and consistency. So this is where when people commit to something, they don't want to go back and take a few steps back. They're like, yeah, I've already said yes a few times. Like, it's pretty straightforward at this point to just get them to say the big yes at the end, right? This is why you've probably heard of trial closes, right? I know in Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson, he talks about trial closes a lot. Where on those things, it's like, did you get that? You guys getting that? Isn't that cool? Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? Wouldn't you like to be like that? How would you feel? Wouldn't it be cool if you felt like that? And you're basically just getting these people to say like, yes, it's true. Another awesome one, by the way. All right, this one is like so classic. This is one from like the early 90s. It's in this book called How to Master the Art of Selling Anything by Tom Hopkins. He calls these tie downs. When you can just say something and it's like, oh, here's like some random thing that I'm talking about the product, like some bold claim that I'm making. And you can make that bold claim. But when you're sitting down with someone, it's like, hey man, like, look, like it's sunny outside. But the tie down, it's like, it's sunny outside, isn't it? Isn't it sunny outside? And the person's like, yes, it is. So having those little things where they're like unconsciously nodding their heads and saying yes, the more and more of those that you get throughout the conversation, it's going to make it easier when you pivot into actually pitching them on your offer. So what I like to do is I like to start building that yes letter, as it's known, where I'm getting many yeses and again, getting the nods, getting the people to be like, oh, that's interested. And again, if you have a big idea from the get-go, that's the thing you need to focus on the most. And I've had some big ideas, honestly, the last couple of weeks. And there's one where I'm like, oh man, this is an awesome thing. And I did a little bit of research. I'll talk about that after at the end of this episode. But what you want to do is you want to build up that yes ladder. And at the end, again, you want to have multiple ones. I think Jason Fladlien talks about this in his Webinar Genius program, where right up until that pivot point, right, where you want to pitch someone and actually present them with the offer, you have to get their permission. And the best way to do this is be like, do you guys feel like you gained something out of this today? Do you feel like you know a lot more than you did? Do you feel like you were certain, whereas before learning all that information, you were kind of frustrated and you were very uncertain about the future and what everything was going to look like? And again, people are like, yes, yes, yes. And it's like, all right, cool. Do I have your permission to show you guys something that I came up for you? Like, do I have your permission right now to just talk about that? And people will be like, yeah, you know what? And if they say no, like, there's obviously ways to overcome that. We're like, you know what? Like, I don't think you guys are that interested. And people are like, what? Like, I am interested, right? And they'll actually ask you to pitch them, which is awesome. But it comes down to getting people's permissions. Like, I right now, I'm outreaching to all sorts of podcasters, right? Like, or people that I want to get on my podcast, right? And these are people who have digital marketing agencies, but they're more so in the online community because I don't just want to get people who have made money. Like, I like people who have businesses that are different. Like I'm trying to get this one lady on who's like this bookkeeping and accounting expert, because I think that that's one thing that a lot of marketers, especially like entrepreneurs like me, are not great at, and we want to get more information on that, right? Like we want some hacks on keeping our books. And there's some other people as well, like outsourcing and automation experts and angel investors. Like I'm trying to outreach to a lot of people and get them. So what I've done is I've compiled an email list. And again, I'm inviting them on first of all. And again, the email, it's like I just email them subject line or whatever. There's one dude where I sent him an email and I put in the wrong subject line. And it was like a clickbait kind of subject line, and I already hit sent, and I was like, all right, whatever. Like, oh well. And there was also a typo in it. I think it was something too where I'm like, oh, like morning, dude, and it was like I sent it in the evening at like 7 or 8 p.m. Anyways, but I've made a list of people, and again, like the subject now is crystal clear, and all of it's like, hey man, like I'm a huge fan of yours. You know, I'm excited about this project that you have coming up, or the stuff that you've been working on, or I've, you know, taken your program before. You know, recently I just started this podcast. I've had a couple of guests, you know, this dude who's been on, and I have these people booked on over the next few months. You know, would you be interested in having that? You know, if you're interested, let me know. And then in the PS, I'm usually like, by the way, like keep what you're doing. Like I love it. You know, I loved this specific thing. And again, that has value for them. And again, from there, I'm like, again, asking their permission, being like, hey man, do you want to be on my you know, podcast? I'm not asking them to sell anything. Sure, I'm getting them to sacrifice their time, which is another big thing. It's like I'm getting them to invest their time first of all. But then from there, again, I'm just getting them to talk about themselves, and people love to talk about themselves. It's like the easiest way to build rapport. Any of the biggest leaders you've ever seen, this is like Bill Clinton's trick, right? I don't know anything about Bill Clinton. I don't even think he's written a book, but for whatever reason, I've seen conversations where people are like, oh, he just made me feel like $1 million. And I think this is actually in Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. It might be some other president, but he's like, oh, their trick is he just gets them to talk about themselves. He just is like, oh, like, tell me about yourself. And then when they're like, oh, like, and then after the conversation, they ask people, like, how do you feel? They're like, man, like, he was awesome. Like, oh, cool. Like, what did he talk? It's like, I don't know. He just talked about me the whole time. And it's like, all right, like, that makes perfect sense. So that's kind of one of my things. But at the same time, right, it's like I'm letting them talk about themselves. And all of the people who listen to the podcast on a consistent basis, like listen to those and like, wow, like this dude is definitely original. Like he's not just some generic internet marketer with these unoriginal ideas. Like he's kind of seen into the future in some cases. He has success, so I can see why Maddie invited him to be on this episode. But again, it all comes down to not spamming people, right? Because you get those emails all the time where it's like, good morning, sir. Like I am, like, I don't know, it is me from this company. You know, we do everything like SEO, web development, app development, web design. It's like this list of things. And you get those spam emails and you're like, yeah, I can clearly tell you're not in my country. You have no understanding of where I am. And, you know, one thing that used to make me angry or upset more so, or just a little bit peeved, I'd say, is when I would call, I think it was either my bank or my telemobile company, like Bell or Rogers, I don't remember. Anyways, I would call them and I would have a problem, and we'd be like in the middle of the problem, and they'd be trying to like pitch me on other things. And I'm like, I just want to like solve this problem now. Like, why are you trying to sell me other things? And it's part of their structure. And there's been all of these reports and stuff. I think I've seen it on W5 and Marketplace a few times where they really dive deep into these companies. And it's like what Rogers and Bell tell their employees, just to like squeeze every cent out of their customers. And you're just like, oh, like I hate you. But because people don't like that stuff, right? Like when people have a problem, all right, when I used to work at Shopify, they would always be prompting you to like ask people to like tell them about other services and stuff to make the company more like more money. Anyways, I found that the strategy that was most effective is like people would call in and then I would just help them out with their problem. And at the end of the conversation, I'd be like, yeah, man, so like, how's business going? Oh, cool. Like, tell me about that. And then I'd give them a bit of a value. And then I'd be like, hey, by the way, before we end this call, I just want to tell you about XYZ feature. You know, is that something that, you know, interested? Like, would you be interested in saving a little bit of money long-term right now? If you prepaid, you know, would you be interested in like a cash advance or like a loan? Like, you know, where are you at in your business? Like, you know, by the way, we sell shipping labels. Like, you kind of go into and pivot into each of those different things. But it was more natural, and people would buy a lot more than that. Even though like my managers all the time would be like, oh, like you should have that conversation in the middle. And some of these calls, like, because you'd have them listen to your calls, right? And then they'd give you feedback on them, and they'd give you feedback sometimes, and you're like, okay, like, sometimes you're like, yeah, like that makes sense. But sometimes it'd be like, oh, like this was the perfect time to pivot into an ass conversation. It's like that guy was super angry and upset. Why would I try and sell him something like there? Like he's in a bad state of mind, right? And again, people don't buy on logic, they buy on emotion. So when people are in this closed kind of state of mind where they're super frustrated and overwhelmed, like it's very difficult to sell them something. So for me, it's like, why would I try and push that? And they'd be like, oh, like you need to do this. And it's like, that feels so icky. Like I'm not gonna do that. Like I want to get someone's permission. Like I want to gain their trust first. I want to bring them some value before I even try and sell them anything, just because it makes it a lot easier. But at the same time, helping people is really good. Like again, these people out there who are just spamming and hoping you click on their link and buy, like, man, you're going to get blocked from Facebook and LinkedIn and all these platforms sooner or later. It is not a long-term viable strategy. You might suck out a little bit of money out of people, but I think that's really the short-term play. Anyways, hope you liked about this, and I would really highly recommend you read the book Permission Marketing. It's been something that I've been really looking into rereading again, because I was at BMV yesterday, which is this secondhand bookstore in Toronto. It's like books, music, videos where you can buy it. And I was looking at like this whole business section, and there was a ton of Seth Godin books. And I've read a lot of his stuff. I've read Purple Cow, Tribes, Permission Marketing, The Icarus Deception. I need to read All Marketers Are Weird because, as I mentioned, I'm a super weird dude and I'm a marketer, so it's like perfect fit. And then I think I've also read Lynchpin, which is a really good book. Similar to Lynchpin is like similar, I think, to Cal Newport's book, So Good That They Can't Ignore You. It's kind of similar, but different in its own way. And I think Seth Godin is really just, I hate the word thought leader, but he has some original stuff. And he's like the OG of blogging. If you type Seth into Google, he's like #1 result because he blogs every single day for the past 20 years. So he's maintaining that algorithm, right? Like that's why he's so successful. He just sits down, he's like, whatever. And one thing he talks about too is just how a lot of marketing is really art, right? Like there's totally a science to it, but there's also an art to it, whether that's design, whether that's copywriting, whether that's like storyboarding your ideas and copyboarding everything correctly. There is definitely an art to it, but I'd say it's more science. But I think with him, he's like, your job as a marketer is only to create art. I think there's a YouTube presentation that he has where he really goes in depth into that principle. And I think moving forward in the next decade, in the 2020s, I'm really thinking like design is going to be playing a lot more effect, specifically in the world of funnels, because man, I see some ugly web design every single day, and just the layout and structure I think is going to be a big thing. Like I personally despise navigation menus. Anytime that I see them on a web page, I'm immediately rolling my eyes and in pain, because what I like to do with navigation menus is actually linked into this whole section. But we're going way off topic right now as we wrap up this episode. If you did like this episode, I want you to actually consider subscribing. And it's odd because I've looked at the stats, and there's some random platforms where people do subscribe, but I've looked at like Spotify and iTunes and TuneIn, and I've looked at people even who just visit the RSS feed on undergroundmarketingconspiracy.com. And they're not subscribed, yet they're listening to all my episodes. So consider subscribing and consider watching and downloading maybe even a few more episodes, so you can listen to me maybe while you're at the gym, or maybe while you're doing some work, or maybe you're having a cup of coffee. You can listen to more episodes. And tomorrow, we have a super exciting topic. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about marijuana marketing. And this is going to be going over, I was actually reading, I'll go more into why very briefly. I was reading Green Entrepreneur yesterday, and it was like this Joe Rogan thing. And I was looking at really just all the ads and stuff and seeing how you can get around, because you can't advertise marijuana on Facebook and Google, which I'll talk more about tomorrow. But I find this a very interesting topic, and this book is like, it's the boom, it's like a $10 billion industry, like you're gonna miss it. And I'm like, that's what everyone's saying. Like everyone's saying you're gonna miss out on cryptocurrency, right? Everyone's saying you're gonna miss out on the funnel bubble. Everyone's saying that you're gonna miss out on Facebook advertising, that you're gonna miss out on like affiliate marketing. And it's just like, all right, dude, like there's, going back to Richard Branson's old quote, it's like, business ideas are like buses. There's always another one coming along just a few minutes later, and you just have to wait for the next opportunity. And again, I think the main thing with permission marketing is like you're being a lot more patient, right? Which Gary Vaynerchuk like loves to like hammer into your head. I think there's like only really three things that he talks about where it's like create content, jab, 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 right hook, hustle, and then be patient. Like that's the summary of Gary V in my mind for everything that he says. Like you don't need to listen to these like hour and a half long interviews. But the topic tomorrow I think is just going to be very interesting and different from what you guys have seen before. And it really just comes down to a few people that I've talked about this specific topic with. And again, there's a huge market, and I just wanted to really give in my 2 cents on marijuana and CBD and how you can actually sell that product and how you can actually do about that. There'll be no talking about vaping because I think vaping is stupid as well as completely unhealthy. All right, that is all for today, my conspirator and conspirators. I shall see you next time on another episode of the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo!